Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, the pre-COVID masturbator, and we got the finger thing going. And look, I wanted to show you this, 98. That's as close as it gets. This is like an oxygen meter or something like that. But Lucy was prepared. She was that woman was ready for COVID, man. She had everything. We got the house. We have all the cleaning stuff, and we have the antiseptic wipes, and we've got like thermometers coming out of our ears. So if I get COVID, I'm going to be the first person in town to know it. Don't come too close to me. I'm going to stay back a little bit. Don't kiss me. No kissing in this episode. This is the no kissing episode of the bathtub, and we're doing a few of these quickly before in case I do succumb to this really awful disease. I've had all my shots, and I'm going to be okay, but. I want to do a few of these very quickly. Also, I kind of fell behind. I finished some long pieces, and as a result, I've just been reading totally selfishly. I've had a great reading period, and just reading stuff for no reason whatsoever. The only real reason to read. And this episode, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite books as a kid, when I was 14 or 15, Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. Look at that cover. I think even if you didn't like Arthur C. Clarke, you'd have to like this book. Look at the back cover with all the other Ballantine covers. I had this whole set as a kid, and I still have them. This was one of my favorite books when I was 14 or so, 15. I started as a Ray Bradbury, like many of us who become science fiction nerds at some part of our life. Ray Bradbury kind of converted me, and though I was already susceptible because I read stuff like Dr. Dolittle when I was a kid and Voyage to the Mushroom Planet, so there's something wrong with me anyway. And then I started reading Ray Bradbury, and I started looking for stuff like Ray Bradbury, and ended up with someone like Childhood's End. I think my gray old high school professor, he may be out there, Mr. Holden, David Holden. He used to always tell me he was really nice to me, even though I was a horrible student. And he assigned this in class. I think I'd already read it, or I may have read it for his class. I can't remember. But I do love Arthur C. Clarke. We've talked about him in the past. I didn't bring in my other Arthur C. Clarkes. We talked about Songs from a Distant Earth, one of his much later books, and slightly more realistic book. But he was a scientist, quote unquote, and yet he started off as a science fiction fan in England, and he wrote his stuff is he's as I've said this before. We were talking about A. Van Vogt recently. They kept talking about science fiction like it was really scientific. I've never understood people who want to say, I really want hard science in my science fiction. I've never understood that, because science fiction writers just pulling it out of their butts. And I know he knows his science, but Childhood's End is completely ridiculous, science-wise. It's completely ridiculous, like much of his fiction, which takes place in these far futures where there's some wonderful short stories in Arthur C. Clarke where I think some aliens come to Earth thousands of years from now. Or he wrote a book called Against the Fall of Night, and the city and the stars, about Earth millions of years from now, when all sorts of weird changes have happened. Some people have referred to him as science. His work as science fantasy. I'll leave it to you guys to go read Sean Klute's wonderful encyclopedia, or some of the articles written by. There's lots of people who've written about science fantasy, unlike me, which means it's kind of rough. Clark Ashton Smith is sometimes referred to as science fantasy, which is it presumes there's some sort of futuristic scientific rationale for these wonders, but they're not really worked out, and they're kind of just fabulous imagination. Fabulous imaginings is what I kind of wanted to say. Anyway, we read Childhood's End for the first time since I was 14. And my friend Kim Newman often said, and I've quoted him, I'm sure I said this before, he's often said that when the books we like when we were children, when we go back to them, they turned out to be still really good books. And I've gone back and reread, for example, the Dr. Dolittle books, and they're still really, really good books. But the books we love when we're teenagers often turn out to be crap. I always thought he was sort of right, but at the same time, in this case, he wasn't right. This is a wonderful book still. I really enjoyed it. I must have just gone right through it in maybe an afternoon and a morning or something like that. And it's the premise of it. I'm going to give you a little of the premise because it goes so far off the science map. It becomes just this kind of weird futuristic fantasy about this intergalactic, I just want to say a force that sort of pervades everything. and we start to recognize as this large, huge historical astrophysical presence in the universe that kind of guides things and changes things. And I don't want to go to more than that. But the opening of the book, it tells it from a lot of different points of view, which sometimes is a little confusing, I find, in any type of fiction. And we move a lot from different characters' points of view and a lot of different things happening. But it all comes together at the end, which I think is an imaginatively just... It's an inspired vision of this thing, these things that happen. And Childhood's End is a perfect name for the title because it's about an Earth sometime in the future, 22, when Earth is about close to a nuclear war. Tell me about it. And it was written in the late 40s, early 50s, I believe. I should really tell you because it's right in front of me. 1953 is the copyright date for this book. And nuclear war is kind of impending, and suddenly when Earthlings feel like they're not going to, Earth people can't make this world work anymore, an alien ship comes down, and it started basically, unlike Independence Day where they just start obliterating everybody, these aliens are kind of beneficent, and they come to try to help Earth solve its problems and to tell them to stop screwing things up. And they never come out of the spaceship. They just send down directives, and they're basically benevolent despots. They basically tell people what to do. They rarely punish anybody, but they basically direct everybody, and they actually control technology to some extent as far as what they give Earthlings and what they don't. And they speak to everybody over the radio or something like that. Pure mountain water, no pixels. And anyway, I don't want to give too much away. But eventually, the first third of the book, these aliens come out and present themselves. And I don't want to give that one away because when I first read it, it was a great idea. But when they come out, they kind of present themselves as figures from human mythology going back centuries, thousands and thousands of years. And they are figures that we recognize through our collective mythology. So anyway, that's just the first third of the book. And then there's another character who always wanted to be an astronaut, but these the aliens won't let Earthlings leave the planet. They make them stay there, and you don't even really know why they're doing it, but it all makes sense as you move along. And there's one alien who likes to come down and read occult books, like books about telepathy and about Atlantis and about various human supernatural ghosts and all that supernatural events. And that's kind of strange, but it all starts to come together. And I won't give you any more than that, except that even though this is 1953 and it's science fiction from 1953, it's not about science. It's really about a kind of a collective desire for some sort of a vision of the world and the collective desire of these human beings to join in this outer space adventure, which they can't to some extent. I won't really tell you more than that. But it has it's a mix of kind of wonder and kind of aspiration and just apocalyptic nightmare, which all sort of is not horrible. That's the best I can say. Childhood's End, completely unusual, still a very good book. Some people have complained when I've said this. I think Clarke is actually a really nice prose writer. I think that's true of Bradbury as well. And he's a very good prose writer, and he has a great sense of creating these kind of mythic visions of our future. I was really glad I reread it. I'm going to go back and reread some more Arthur C. Clarke in the coming days, months, weeks, and years, pre and post COVID. Take care. If I get sick, I swear to God, I'll send everybody a note and tell you not to, to burn all my love letters if I come down with this disease. Okay.